Okay, everybody. So I made a little progress on my painting since last time. What I did is I decided to draw on the base. So I put a little, fix it up and added a band along the bottom. And I also painted the background just to see what it's like. This is completely optional. I just wanted to see, if it would look better or not. My original does not have the background painted in, and that's fine too. The only thing about it is if this gets too wet, because this is all wet right now, it's going to start warping. So it's starting to get a little rumpled. Okay, so don't, don't add too much water. Be very careful. Okay, I wanted to show you how to like smooth out this area because you can see where it's pretty uneven. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some white. Okay, just get the white, put it here. Okay, going to just get some clean water and dilute my white a little bit. Okay, I'm using the biggest brush, and I'm just going to brush it on top, just like this, sort of evening out all that paint. Okay, so painting it all in here. And then this starting to smooth it out or even out that the splotchiness of the paint, as you can see. And then this area, remember that we want this one side of the globe to be darker so that it shows that it's curving. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm getting the blue. Okay, and I'm going to go in there again right along the edge. Okay, and I'm just going to blend it in to where I just put that white paint. Okay, so it looks more smooth and even. Okay, so right along the edge, just like that. Okay, and I'm barely touching the paper when I'm blending with my brush. Okay, so I'm barely touching it like this. Okay, because I'm just trying to move that paint a little bit, but I don't want to damage my paper. Okay, so you can see where that really evened out everything a lot more. Okay, all right. So your next step is to go in and paint the background. I'm going to paint the trees. I'm going to switch brushes to the medium size one, and I'm going to use the green, okay, that I have. So it's kind of a dark green, but I'm going to mix it with the blue. Okay, so I'm making kind of a greenish blue color. And I'm just going to go back and paint on top of that watercolor. You can fill in the trees solid or not. You can kind of have it, I sort of usually have it sort of solid in the middle, and then as the branches extend outwards, they become less solid. I like that. And just kind of work my way down, and I make the branches wider apart or longer at the base, okay? And then more skinny, of course, at the top. At this point, because this is pretty wet, if you want to go back and add a little shading, like you can go back, get some, I'm getting some brown. I'm just gonna kind of touch the brown in there a bit, okay? If I want different shades of the green or not, it's up to you. Okay, so to, that's a pretty dark tree because that one's going to be up close. But if I want to make it lighter, I'm going to add white. Okay? And so this next tree is going to be more pale because it's farther away. So as objects are farther away, they appear paler in color. That's called atmospheric perspective. Okay, so they appear smaller, as you know, but they also appear more dull and paler in value, or lighter in value. Okay, so there's another one, and if I want to change up another one, and I'm going to add even a lighter, added some more white to that same green that I used. I'm going to carefully kind of paint around my little reindeer here. Okay, and then on this side, same kind of thing. Now, if your green looks too minty because you added the white, I would add some more blue in there. So I'm going to do that right now. So it appears almost like a shadow in the background. Now, of course, if your trees are up close, you can paint them with that green like this. Okay, so just adding more trees. Just want them sort of in the background, but not really um, too obvious. And then I'm going to make a taller one here. Just so there's size variation. Otherwise, you don't want everything to look the same. Super boring. Okay, maybe I want to add one back over here. Kind of balance out that color, this sort of blue color. I want to balance it out on the other side. Now, even though this paper absorbs the water pretty fast and you don't get a lot of bleeding um, going on, which is helpful because sometimes with watercolor paper you get too much bleeding. Um, you still have to be careful not to paint too fast, okay? Or all these colors will run together. Okay, so there's trees, right? And then I'm going to paint in my little reindeer. I think you should be brown. Kind of brown, maybe brown with tan, that yellow ochre. Paint him in. I'm still using the medium sized brush. I didn't switch to my tiny brush yet. Um, but you could switch to a tiny brush for this one. Might make it a little easier. What I'm going to do is take some white, mix it with my brown. Some white, this white paint. And I'm just going to, mix it with just a tiny bit of brown, just so it's not pure white. Okay, and I'm gonna paint in like this part, around his nose, maybe his ears. Okay. I'm gonna switch to my tiny brush and do the antlers and the eye. I'm just gonna use black for the eye. Make sure this paint isn't too wet though. Otherwise it's gonna be just gonna have touches of the black. Down here. Okay. I don't really like how that eye looks. I think it got too big. So I'm gonna blot it. Okay, lift off some of that. Go back, get that brown. Go around it. Get a little smaller. Different shade of brown. I think I need my tan. Go back. There we go. And then black for the nose. Or red. Whatever. Again, I think the black like too bright. I'm gonna just blot it while it's still wet. Blotted that. Okay, just so it's not so obvious. Okay, and then the antlers. Again, I'm going to use brown. I'm going to mix it with a little white so it's a little opaque. And I'm just going to paint them in. Okay, so there we go. All right, so I'm going to let this part dry. Okay, and what I could do is work on the bottom. I'm just going to paint it in kind of the same way. You can mix white with a lot of your colors so that you can paint over them, okay? Once this is dry, I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you the next step for doing the snow on top of the trees, okay, and in the sky. All right. Okay, so now that this is dried pretty okay, I'm going to use the white paint. Okay, I'm going to thin it out a little bit. My brush is wet, but not really too thinned out. And I'm going to go on top of the trees with white, just to put snow on the top. Imagine snow on top of the branches. Okay, just like this. So I don't really want to cover all of the green. I just want to put have some green and some white. Okay, and I can do that on the same for all the trees. And if you don't want to put snow, that's fine too. Or you want to do different trees, that's fine. You don't have to do pine trees. Okay, just a little white maybe on this one, just very faint. Okay, maybe this one that's so far away, can't, not too much white. Okay. Now these that are pretty far away, I'm going to mix the white with a little bit of this greenish blue color that I already had. And I'm going to put that on top because the snow is further away, so it's going to appear duller. and not so bright white. Okay, so just I mixed white, a little blue, so it's kind of like pale blue. Okay, I'm just sort of dotting it, and dragging the brush a bit on top. Okay, just like that. All right, and then I'm going to use that same color, that kind of pale blue, and I'm going to paint um, some of the snow here. Put some shading in there. Okay, put some for sure. I want the shading around the edge. Okay, right here, and you can see where I already put some before. So I want the shading on the edge here. Right, but you don't want to make your snow too blue. Right, you want to keep it light. So I rinsed my brush out. I'm going to go back and just get pure white. Okay, and just go on top of this now. Okay, so pure white, just brushing on top of what I've already painted. Right, so if I want it lighter. When you paint snow, you want it a little uneven. You don't want it too smooth or it won't look natural. Okay. Alrighty. And then, as you can see, I kind of painted down here. So um, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to put white on top of my mountains for the snow, just like that. Some mountains, snow on top of the mountains here, here. When I paint a mountain, I start at the top and then I draw lines going down. Okay, like that. I think the main thing is not to make it too even, right? And then down here, I'm going to use that same white. I'm barely touching the paper. And I'm just going to sort of blend it up to the mountain, just like that. Then I put a little river in there, so I'm going to get some light blue. A little more blue. Get some light blue, kind of paint it in there. And I think I want to add light blue to the top here too, because these parts are farther away. And if you don't like anything you've painted, of course you can paint over it. What I would be careful about though is using that technique where you put water on top and then blot. Be really careful with that because you can see where it made it really uneven. Plus, you don't want to tear up your paper. Okay, so in this painting, what I would do is I would paint over areas rather than lifting off too much. Just keep painting on top. Sort of like how we would do it in acrylic. We would paint on top of the paint that's already there. Okay, I want to fix that later. Oops. Okay, now doing the snow. So what you want to do is get your white paint. You're going to thin it out. Okay, thin it out like this. And remember that spattering technique where we flick the brush? I would practice a little bit on your palette first, okay, before you start flicking on your painting, okay? But just like we did in the seascape painting, you're going to flick your brush so you get little white dots, okay? Just kind of everywhere. If you need to mask off an area, that's fine. Masking off means that, you're going to put some paper down so that the spatter doesn't get everywhere. All right. And if you want, you can go back with your brush and kind of make individual little falling snowflakes or something if you want to do that. Okay. If you feel like you want to see them more clearly. Or they didn't get in places that you wanted to have them. Okay. All right. So we're almost done. The only thing I have left is to do the reflections. Okay, I'm going to let that dry and show you in the next part how to do the reflections.